Hello, this is Dr. Dale again. This video is another stream, continue with the stream of the systemic approach to medicine, actually to disease, either medicine or disease, still on the four major compound. Previously, two videos, introduction of this four major compounds, and also the interrelationships between these four major compounds. Start from this video, I'm going to talk individually of the compounds and their associated diseases. And their metabolism and associated diseases. For example, today I'm going to start with move on from last time I also mentioned about the nucleic acid, the genes actually, that's what the genetic disease is, a lot of variety of them. I use a couple examples, but today I move on to another carbohydrates, metabolism and diseases. So talk about this carbohydrates. It's referring really to the carbs. It's like carbohydrates in the biosystem. It's not like the universe existing the carbon hydrogen compounds. These are different. Those are like methyl groups or the carboxyl chemicals. But this is to talk about the bio related carbohydrates. Of course, we know it are the glucose associated from mono carbohydrates. Oligocarbohydrates to polycarbohydrates. So this is the structure. So fundamental unit body can use is the glucose, which is the mono carbohydrates, 6 carbons. And the glucose so we take this glucose from the food, and then actually we take glucose from the food as a carbohydrates like the starch or the cellulose, etc., and also the collagens from the animal, starch from the plants. And the cellulose really cannot be metabolized, cannot be absorbed, so we're not going to talk about that. Mainly are the collagens or the starch from the plant or from animal tissues. And those polycarbs after digestion, absorption as a bicarb form, and then further metabolized to the glucose. So the body directly uses glucose to metabolize. So this we already know if the body cannot metabolize glucose, we know it, because metabolizing glucose needs hormones, insulin. So the most notorious and ubiquitous and everybody knows the diabetes. So this is the one typical condition associated with this carbohydrates metabolism. If the body cannot use glucose, either from the peripheral tissue cannot take it, or the insulin cannot secrete, cannot send this signal. So that is the one of the glucose, one disease associated with the glucose metabolism. And the other pathway during this glucose metabolism pathway, if there is enzyme deficiency, I think I mentioned. I think one of the famous, important glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, which means the body cannot use this glucose, and it particularly affects the red blood cells. So this is in the red blood cells, which red blood cells use glucose as energy, not like the fat or others, but red blood cells and also the brain use the glucose as major energy source. So if this glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, also called Fowler-Bean anemia, so I already mentioned we have the anemia. So this is another example during this pathway of the glucose metabolism. Glucose, in addition to be taken as a through the catabolism, which means generated ATP through the Krebs cycles, you probably know it if a medical or bio major. And also glucose, the spared or cannot use all of the glucose. What do they go? The body has anabolism, which means to synthesize a large compound like glycogen to store in the liver, the muscle, and to as a storage when the body needs them. So during this anabolism process, during this synthesis glycogen process, there is another series of couple conditions called glycogen storage disease, with a genetic disease, inheritance as the autosomal recessive, And these are basically the body cannot use the glucose, cannot use the glycogen, which is a multiple form polycarbohydrates synthesized from glucose for the storage in the case that the body cannot use all the glucose. So this the extra glycogen stored in the different organs like the liver, the heart, the cardiac muscle, and the skeletal muscles. So the body has this condition, very poor metabolism of carbohydrates. So this is about, I think it's type 3 or 4, type 4 of them. Actually, one of is the milder form of the other ones. Pretty depends, type 3 or type 4. So this is a glycogen storage disease, depends on where it's located. And the symptoms are different. Some of them is even very serious, is incompatible to life. Some of them just has the muscle weakness. For example, one of the type 4 is myocardial. It's really the skeletal muscle cannot use this glycogen. So this is because we know the glycogen stored in the skeletal muscle and the liver, and for the use when during the fasting. When this muscle cannot use this glycogen, so this myocardial disease patient has the problem without muscle strength, cannot standing or cannot walking, or so this kind of problem. But they are the genetic disease. And others like the heart. If the heart is also a muscular tissue, which is cardio-muscular, if the heart cannot use this glycogen, and then the heart, the muscle will just hypertrophy, means compensating this defect, so to work hard to make the heart causing a cardiomyopathy. And also the other liver, for example, liver cannot use glycogen. Liver is another organ to store the glucose as a glycogen. So if it happened in the liver, so it's also had the systemic problem like hypoglycemic, hypolipidemia, etc., etc. So this is about another pathway of the carbohydrates metabolism associated with these diseases. And there's of course there are also some other important process. For example, if during the Krebs cycles body cannot use pyruvate, or during the Krebs cycles body have other enzyme deficiency, cannot generate ATP, cannot generate energy, or cannot generate enough power or potential for the reducing. So these are all the possibility associated with this carbohydrates metabolism. There, in addition, except for the glucose metabolism, like this glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, or the diabetes are common. The glycogen storage disease is not common. I think probably referring to as a rare disease, as you can say that. It's genetic, but it could happen. So this is just briefly, systemically, just give you some idea from the basic organic compound, biocompounds, and associated with disease. And next time I'm going to talk about the lipid problem and also associated with diseases, and then move on to the tissue-associated diseases and the systemic organ-associated diseases. So this is how this stream of video, the purpose for that. And I hope it just reminds you, if you had background, just somehow something behind your memory, so you can just pick up. And thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.